Proletarians of all countries unite. We are of the same blood, you and I. In the name of Perun, greetings to all. This audio is dedicated to the Aryan question. Now this term is defiled thanks to the actions of the capitalist fascist army of Hitler. I will read you one chapter from the work of the Polish Marxist Ludwik Krzyzewski, Anthropology and Physics Races of 1902, republished 2015. Chapter 9: Aryan Languages, Culture and Initial Settlement of Aryans, the Modern European Population in Anthropological Terms, Distribution of Long-Headed Blondes and Short-Headed Individuals, the Anthropological Past of Europe and the Invasion of Short-Headed Peoples, the Original Anthropological Type of the Aryan. Aryan Indo-European languages are spoken by one-third of the world's population. However, they continue to spread and currently encompass almost all of Europe, with the exception of a few isolated areas in the East Siberia and Iranian plateau, the Indian subcontinent up to the Vindhya Mountains, America, Oceania, and even Southern Africa. The modern family of Aryan languages is divided into 9 groups of varying significance. Aryans, the noble ones, was the term used by ancient Indians and ancient Iranians to distinguish themselves from the subjugated peoples. We understand in the modern times the situation is a little bit different because Aryan people are destroying itself and almost not almost disappeared by but not so many as it was before. So let's start. The groups comprising the family of Aryan Indo-European languages are as follows. The first, the Hindustani group, the most numerous, with 140 or 160 million speakers in the Indian subcontinent. This group splits into several languages as distinct from one another as the Romance languages and into several hundred dialects. Hindi is spoken by 61 million people, Bengali by 22.5 million, and Marathi by 10 million. This group also includes Romani dialects. The second, the Iranian group, has 18 million speakers. The most widely spoken language is modern Persian, spoken in Persia, Iran, or Iran, Kabul, Herat, and by the common people of Bukhara. Related languages include Persian in Khorasan and Gujarat, Kurdish in the regions around the Lake Van and the Lake Urmia, the language of the Pamir Highlanders, and Ossetian. This group also includes languages that differ significantly, such as Pashto, Afghan, and Armenian. The third, the Greek group, currently has only 2.5 million speakers in Greece, some areas of Europe and Turkey, and Asia Minor. The fourth, the Albanian group, has fewer than 2 million speakers in the Western Balkans. It represents the remnants of the ancient Illyrian group. The fifth, the Romance group, with up to 130 million speakers, evolved from Latin. It includes Portuguese, Spanish, French, Provençal, Italian, Latin spoken by 500,000 people in the Graubünden canton and some areas of Tyrol. And finally, Romanian. The sixth, the Celtic group, non-exist as isolated, declining oases. Breton language included Armoric in Brittany and Welsh in Wales. Gaelic languages included Irish, spoken purely by 160,000 people, and by 950,000 in a mixed form with English. Earth, spoken in the northwestern Scotland by 400,000 people, most of whom also know English, and Manxon on the Isle of Man, where it is spoken by only a small proportion of the population. The seven, the Germanic group, has up to 120 million speakers. The ancient Scandinavian language gave rise to Danish, Swedish, and Norwegian. Gothic has disappeared. The Low German language gave rise to Frisian, English, Dutch, and Low German dialects, while High German developed separately. 8. The Lithuanian group. Lithuanian is spoken by 500,000 peoples and Latvian by 900,000 people. And the last one, the Slavic group, is divided into the western branch, currently included Polish, Czech, and Sorbian, and the southeastern branch, Bulgarian and Serbo-Slovenian in the south, and Russian languages in the east. And also, for nowadays, we know as a Ukrainian and Belarusian. Some Indo-European languages are very vigorous and continue to spread, such as Germanic and Slavic languages. Others exist as remnants, sporadically, such as Celtic. However, not only languages like English in the Germanic group and modern Persian in the Iranian group, but even entire groups such as Hindustani and Romance groups are nothing more than simplified dialectics that have lost their original structure, rendering them unsuitable for studying the structure of the primitive Aryan language. Almost all Aryan peoples, with few exceptions, possess advanced techniques that destroy the close connection between nature and humans, which still exists among the indigenous populations of the Americas. To some extent, humans have become independent from natural conditions, but in return, they have fallen under the yoke of a techno-economic system. The nomadic mobility of the Afghan, the democratic communal structure of the Pamir Highlanders, the Kafirs, and the Kurds, and some extents of the Albanians serve as the only more vivid examples of the past life of the Aryans, which was conditioned by the weak development of technology. The Kafirs infidels, even in the smallest details of their way of life, resemble the lives of the Indo-Chinese Highlanders. In Kafiristan, an area of 5,000 square miles, there live between 100,000 and 350,000 people who speak at least 5 different languages, each of which in turn splits into numerous dialects due to the fact that each valley is occupied by a separate group of people who are hostile to their neighbors. Hatred of the Afghans is found among all Kafirs. The Kafirs and an Afghan recounts kill our people where they can. Mutual experimentation constitutes their main occupation along the border of their territory. A Kafir is not considered a man until he kills an enemy, and only then is he granted the right to wear the mark of manhood on his head. Sometimes in groups they descend from their mountain nests with the help of ropes, jump and climb like goats, lie in ambush for a passerby and attack him, no matter who he is. No one has ever penetrated their lands. Do not go to them. You may buy a Kafir boy in Badakhshan, but do not hope to enter their country, even as a liberator of a captive. One Afghan bought a young Kafir, raised him, and did many good deeds for him. Then he granted him freedom and sent him back to his parents, believing that the Afghans accompanying him would return unharmed. The young man returned to his home, but his escorts were killed. The mountain passes are littered with the bones of their enemies. The comprehensive study of roots denoting various items and objects, which in the roots are found among several of all Aryan groups, has made it possible with some probably to reconstruct the way of life of the Proto-Aryans. However, some researchers excessively idealize their past. The confirmation of names for animals and livestock products indicates that the source of livelihood for the Proto-Aryans was precisely animal husbandry. War was waged with the aim of seizing cattle. Sanskrit gavirsti, the desire to have cows, war, gavirsti. The leader was given the nickname shepherd, Sanskrit gopa, shepherd of cows, equals king. Moreover, they were familiar with the ram and the goat. They had domesticated the dog and the cultivated barley. It is doubtful, however, whether they engaged in the mining and mental agri. Their family structure was a patriarchal. Their religion consists of the nature worship, particularly the worship of the sky. Dues or Diaus, sky, derives from the same root as Zeus, Jupiter. These facts indicate that the way of life of the primitive Aryans resembled that of modern Kafirs or Somalis. Based on these premises, we can conclude that in the most distant era, about which linguistic provided us with some indications, the Aryan population numbered no more than several million people and was divided into numerous small tribes, consisting of a few thousand of several tens of thousands of individuals, speaking more or less distinct dialects. Some of these dialects disappeared over the centuries, while others gave rise to the modern groups of Aryan languages. For instance, the Thracian dialectic disappeared, whose speakers at the dawn of the history occupied the Balkan Peninsula and Asia Minor, forming a transnational link between the Greek and the Iranian groups. However, each of the modern groups of Aryan languages was formed not from a single dialect but from several related dialects. Examining from, for example, the history of the Aryan invasion of India, we see how one wave of tribes overtakes another. Here, here it gradually merges with the previous wave and with the indigenous population, giving rise to the modern Indic languages. Indigenous, yes, indigenous population. Okay, next. Those blondes are most numerous in Iceland, on the Scandinavian peninsula, and the Scottish islands. Iceland, when I said about numerous in Iceland, I mean the country Iceland. They still predominate in England, Denmark, and along the shores of the Baltic and German seas, and are encountered less frequently among the population as we move south, east, and southeast, although there still exist in some places more or less significant oases and zones with such populations. Such oases can be found in Andalusia among the Kabyles in the vicinity of Venice and Florence, and even among the Tajiks and Halakhas of the Zarafshan region. Among Halakhans, 56 Halakhans, there are 9 individuals with fair hair, 29 with fair beds, and 10 with blue eyes. Among 29 Tajiks, there are 5 individuals with blonde hair, 3 with dark hair, 13 with fair beds. beards and 6 with blue eyes. However, one should not assume that blue eyes and fair hair encoded in a mixed type are things of a pure blonde. The fact is that as the blonde spread, he intermingled with other racial elements, production a wide variety of mixed types who more often inherit the eye color rather than the hair color. Hair color. Due to these circumstances, an extremely numerous type of dark blonde with gray or blue eyes emerge, which is so common among the Slavs. This mixed type is for the most part brachycephalic, short-headed, as brachycephali is a reliable sign of descent from the short-headed type of Central Europe, as blue eyes are a sign of descent from the dolichocephalic, long-headed blonde. Another mixed type, namely the brachycephalic blonde, arises from the crossing of the same racial anthropological types, but in different proportional relationship. This type, while not different the hair color or eye color from the pure dolichocephalic blonde, complicates, however, the statistics and the racial geography based on the hair and eye color. Therefore, to become acquainted with the phenomenon, we must also take into account the distribution of the cranial breadth index. This issue has not yet been thoroughly studied. However, the table below provides some insight into the distribution of brachiocephali or cephali in Central Europe. In other words, brachiocephali it increases as we approach the mountain ranges of Central Europe and move eastward. Simultaneously with the phenomenon, also less significantly, there is an increase in the percentage of the population with dark hair and eyes. It is sufficient to compare the Frisians with the southern Bavarians to confirm this. Thus, in areas located at the foot of mountains, brachycephalic types with more or less dark hair are often encountered. As for the eyes, types with blue eyes are relatively rare here, while gray or dark eyes are more common, and in the mountains they already predominate. On the other hand, the Scandinavian brachycephalic represents a mixed type with light hair, mixed light hair, brach, it's very hard word, guys. Brach, brachycephalic types are often found in Lower Bavaria, Bohemia, and Poland. In short, the most racially pure brachycephalic dark-haired are found in a continuous mass along the line from Finisterre to Savoy and further along the mountain chain of Central Europe. In some areas, they constitute 90% of the entire population. However, both to the north and to the south, the cranial breadth index decreases. The cultivated plants and domestic animals that appeared alongside the brachycephalics in France indicated that these cultural acquisitions originate from Iran or Turkestan, where types identical to the our Aryans live in the valleys of the Pamirs. Thus, the wave of brachycephalics may have emerged from these regions and then moved into Europe along the Danube towards Switzerland, making its way into the mountain valleys. But how did it reach Europe? During the glacial period, glacial, yeah, the plains of southeastern Russia were flooded. The Caucasus, the Scandinavian Peninsula, and Finland were centers of ice. The Aral, Caspian, and Black Seas formed a vast inland water area separated from the present-day Mediterranean Sea and possibly connected by the Ob River. Ob, it's a Russian river, Ob, to Arctic Ocean. Thus, the migration of tribes from the Pamirs and Iran to Europe through the Russian plains was impossible. On the other hand, the earliest remains of human skeleton found in area between the Baltic and the Black Sea date back to the era when Neolithic tools and brachycephalic populations dominated France. Skulls discovered near Ladoga, numbering 10 in total, yield an average cranial width index of 72.1, which, in other words, indicate they are distinctly dolichocephalic, with the exemption of one mongoloid-like skull. This individual lived by hunting and fishing, sheltered in pits covered with branches, ate raw meat, was unfamiliar with weaving, and dressed in animal skins. It is likely that dolichocephalic populations inhabited these territories up until historical times. Skulls found in burial mounds indicate that dolichocephalic people lived from Olonets to Kursk and Kiev, from Moscow to Galicia. Galicia is probably Galicia on its western of Ukraine and beyond. For example, the burial mounds of Tver show a cranial index of 76.7, those of Moscow 75.9, and those of Galicia the same figure. Brachycephalic elements appeared relatively recently. Mongoloid population from the east and Slavic population from the southwest. The type of dolichocephalic individuals found in the burial mounds appears in Germanic tombs, dating back to the time of the great migrations of peoples. Consequently, at a time when brachycephalic groups flourished in Western Europe, dolichocephalic groups were predominant in the East, even without any admixture of brachycephalic individuals. This would have been inconceivable if brachycephalic populations had entered Europe from Asia via this route. It is more likely that they came through Asia Minor, displacing the Mediterranean race into the Caucasian mountains or mixing with it. Those brachycephalic population did not appear in Europe immediately. The question now arises, did all brachycephalic population originate from the same point? In the current state of science, it is difficult to say anything definite. Perhaps the Central European brachycephalic population itself is a mixture of some mongoloid-like type with a brunette of the Mediterranean race, with its various layers reflecting signs of such crossbreeding. Moreover, it is possible that the light-haired Slavic and Finnish brachycephalic populations are also hybrids of some primitive mongoloid-like type and a blonde individual. However, all these conjectures represent entirely speculative through possible hypotheses. Where then did the type of dolichocephalic blonde in Europe originate? A type to which apparently the burial mound skeletons of German Russian plain belong and which occupied this area at a time when brachycephalic populations had already settled in France and Central Europe. Our statistical data has revealed that long-headed blondes are most prevalent along the Baltic coast. Now we have confirmed that this has been the case in the past as well. So, when did this type arise? Some scholars trace its origins to the so-called quaternary constant race, which appeared in Europe earlier than all others. This includes the Neanderthal skull with pronounced low dolichocephali long headedness. Oh my god, headedness. And in addition, other remains found in the Upper Rhine region, in the city of Cannstatt, Württemberg, in Egussheim, Alsace, in Nollet, Belgium, in the city of Bruges, Bohemia, in the vicinity of Gibraltar, or vicinity of Gibraltar, and vicinity, yeah. And finally, in the presumed Pliocene strata in Castenedolo, Italy. This type persisted for centuries and then reappears in a slightly modified form in Germanic burial cities and among modern Frisians. The above paleoanthropological picture errs on the side of excessive simplification and schematization as it is based on the fragmentary and questionable data. This should not be forgotten. Thus, we come to the following question. Who initiated the Aryan language? This question has been approached in various ways, and the attempts made in this direction deserve attention for their methodological considerations. However, as for the data that determine one answer to another to the proposed question, they are highly questionable. If, according to Taylor, the Finno-Ugric languages reveal a certain kinship with Aryan language, this occurs only due to the initial anthropological unity of both groups during the time when they were in contact with one another in the region between the Baltic and Caspian Seas. Here, in the prehistoric times, there existed a long-headed type which even today in mixed form constitutes an important element of both the Finno-Ugric and Aryan population. Since the modern brachycephali short-headedness of Finno-Ugric peoples results from their mixing with the Mongoloid-like population, the aforementioned facts support the argument that the long-headed blonde was the originator of the Aryan language. Other proponents of the theory that Aryans originate from blondes base their arguments on the physiological traits of blondes, as well as on the anthropological structure of the most ancient historical Aryan peoples. These scholars assert that blondes consistently appear in history as restless element. The colonization of North America, the cruise, the great migration of people, invasions of Spain, North Africa, and even Egypt in the 15th century, and possibly even as far back as 25th century BC, before Christ. All of these are attributed to blondes. Even in the Iranian, Indian, and Hellenic invasions, they play a role, according to these scholars, as the main force, especially among the aristocratic strata. The hair color of most Greek heroes, specifically those whom Homer gives the epithet Atfol, the family names of Roman patricians, Fluvii, Flavii, and the portraits of the representatives of the old German and French nobility all point to the blonde as the type embodying masculine energy and heroism. From this, it is concluded that blondes as a mobile element imposed their language on the comparatively more passive brachycephalic people. Other attempt to resolve the question through linguistic research. Individual Aryan languages differ from one another due to distinctive sound changes. For example, the Sanskrit kiss becomes the Latin quis, Greek tis, and German vier. Katvaros equal quatuor equal tetara, paucam equal quinique equal tempe, etc. According to this theory, such sound changes were significantly influenced by anthropological factors. The admixture of new elements. This is confirmed, for instance, by the fact that the brachycephalic people of Tyrol and the blondes of the North possess differently abilities in pronouncing p. A pure blonde says knoning, tal, while a brachycephalic Tyrolean says König, tal. Another phenomenon related to this is the transition of the sound f to p and h to k, ka, ka, ha, ka, ha, ka. For example, horn and cornu, pater and pater. Among the Estonians, one finds praura instead of frau, and among the Lithuanians, strops instead of straf. Changes in the aspirates k, p, p into k, t, p are characteristic of the Lithuanian, Slavic, Celtic, and Latin group, as opposed to the Germanic and Greek groups. Thus, if it were now established that Proto-Aryan speech was characterized by an abundance of aspirates and only lost them later as the Aryans spread across Europe, it could be somewhat plausibly assumed that the progenitors of Aryan speech were types processing the ability to pronounce aspirates, and that the brachycephalic people lacking this ability joined them only later. However, the question remains open, as we only have an approximate range of initial sounds, and moreover, with the current state of science, there is no way to confidently determine which sounds predominate in such a distant period, aspirated or non-aspirated sounds. On the other hand, it is undeniable that Polish sounds s, kz, rz, dz appeared later. These sounds, alien to the original Aryan speech, arose as a result of the insertion of a hard element after the later letters K, G, D, not KGB, KGD, or better to say K, G, D. Such a feature, besides the main characteristic of Slavic, Celtic, and Latin languages, is also found in the Finno-Ugric languages spoken by brachycephalic people. Thus, the resolution of the question regarding the original homeland of the Aryans depends on the resolving another issue, namely which type can be considered the progenitor of the Aryan language, if research reveals that its forebears were brachycephalic short-headed individuals. Then the original homeland of the Aryans would indeed have to be south somewhere in the vicinity of the Pamirs and Bactria. From there originate our domesticated animals and plants, brought to us by the wave of brachycephalic people, and in that region this type has been preserved in its entirety among the Iranian highlanders. However, if the Aryan language owes its existence exclusively to blondes, then the European origin of the Aryans must be acknowledgeable. That being said, all these conclusions are based on the assumption that the Aryan language already existed in era when humanity was still divided into groups that were uniform in anthropological terms, consisting exclusively of blondes or of brachycephalic individuals. But just as new races emerged from the intermingling, intermingling of races or intermingling of races. So, in likelihood, the same occurs with languages. Perhaps the Aryan language is of a relative late origin and either emerged of acquired its modern form among a mixed race. In such case, all these conclusions lost their significance. That was the end. Thank you for your attention.